I saw some of my cousins this weekend, and they want, I think, a lot of the same things that you or I want. They want more equality in our country. They want less racism. They want more privacy and less war. And they, like many Americans, say if you want those things, you have no choice but to hold your nose and vote for Hillary Clinton. What's wrong with that logic?
Well, because it's neoliberal policies, globalization, which has created the phenomena of Trump and enraged, disenfranchised supporters, primarily white. And if Clinton wins the election and continues these policies, we are going to get somebody worse than Trump. Trump as a figure may disappear from the political landscape. But until we halt the assault of neoliberalism, the programs of austerity, the corporate assault. I mean, you go to cities like Scranton, Pennsylvania, everything, they just sold their sewer system. Everything is privatized. They sold their parking authority. They've already sold their water system. Rates are going through the roof. This kind of constant, gradual gouging of the underclass, and half of the country lives in poverty or relative poverty, will create a backlash. Trump is not the phenomena. He's responding to the phenomena. And unless we break that phenomena, then we are headed the way all societies that essentially seize up and refuse to respond to legitimate grievances of citizens are headed towards, whether that's Weimar Germany, which ended in the Nazis, or Yugoslavia, which I covered, which ended with the rise of ethnic, religious nationalists like Slobodan Milosevic and Radovan Karadzic and Franjo Tuđman and others. And we have to stop looking beyond this election cycle and see that this corporate-driven ideology, this commodification of the culture, this constant extracting of blood from us as citizens to pay what, in essence, were private debts of the banks, which engaged in their casino capitalism, has political consequences. History has taught us that, and Hillary Clinton is only going to further that process.
Yeah, absolutely. You started to jump ahead to my next question. You touched on it. You were a war correspondent in many countries. You saw the devastation and the chaos, and you saw what led up to it. And in your book, Wages of Rebellion, Revolt, you say you see the same things in America now. Can you speak to what it is you saw that mirrors other countries? What it is you see now that mirrors other countries?
Yeah, well, what mirrors is that there is, in this case, a corporate cabal, a tiny group of the power elite that has seized the machinery of government to serve their own interests at the expense of the vast majority. So this creates what I would call political paralysis, because the normal functions of the state, the common good, we're seeing it with the hedge funds taking over school systems through charter schools, which is because they want the $600-some billion they spend. It's not about teaching disadvantaged children to read or write. There's a cannibalization. Actually, Karl Marx wrote about this as the final stage of capitalism. And I have watched countries that have, whether it's a kind of proto-fascist or an ethnic nationalist cabal seize power to serve their own interest. I've watched the explosion that takes place, and we are no different from them. We're really playing now with potentially deep unrest, especially with the proliferation of weapons in this country, and political breakdown. That's the game we're playing, and I think history has amply illustrated that.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of inevitable when you have a corporate state that will just exploit everything, exploit the resources and the people to the breaking point, that eventually there will be a response. Many believe that in a capitalist society, the corporate entities will always ultimately take over the levers of the state, and they will use the state to further their ends. We talked some about that earlier with the Dakota pipeline, and really with bailing out the banks in 2008. So does that mean capitalism is fatally flawed? And if so, what type of system do you think people should be pushing for?
I lost you the last part. Can you repeat the question?
Yeah, the question was, is capitalism fatally flawed in that way? And if so, what type of system should people be pushing for?
Right. Well, I think we have to differentiate between different types of capitalism. There's the penny capitalism that took place in the farm community where I grew up, where farmers came in and sold their produce. There's regional capitalism. That is, a business owner owns a small factory and sits on the school board, invests in the community. And then there's something else, which is global corporate capitalism, which essentially eviscerates national borders, pushing through trade agreements like NAFTA and the TPP, driving down, doing what capitalism always does, which is maximize profit and drive down labor costs, so that the protections that workers had garnered in the industrialized world, now only about 6% of the public sector is, private sector is unionized, is destroyed because we can use sweatshop workers in Bangladesh who make 22 cents an hour. So I'm not actually anti-capitalist, but capitalism, and again, this is something Marx understood, has to be heavily controlled. And to break up monopolies, to break up, as we see with the banks, these institutions that are quote unquote too big to fail and that are global, that have no loyalty to the national state. And unfortunately, these corporate capitalists have taken over the system so that government now accelerates this assault, as you correctly pointed out, not only on working men and women, the poor, and now the middle class, but of course we can't forget the ecosystem itself.
Right. I think part of that heavy regulation needs to be to make sure that capitalism doesn't put a price on everything, such as air and water.
Well, that's what it's done.
Yeah.
Right, that's what it's done.
Yeah, exactly.
It's the commodification of everything, and they will do what they do, which is that they will exploit, whether it's the natural world or whether it's human capital, until exhaustion or collapse. And now there are no impediments left.
Chris, I can't thank you enough. I hope you'll come back sometime and keep fighting.
Thanks, Lee.